Hi, hello, I'm Sam Harrison. I read, review, and discuss fantasy and science fiction books. Today, I've got a discussion for you on science fiction with my science fiction starter pack. What's a starter pack, you may ask? This is a selection of 4 books across 4 different categories that I believe would be a fantastic place for people to start if they want to read science fiction for the first time, or they want to get back into reading science fiction after having taken a long break. So the books that I have picked are accessible. They are easy to find through like secondhand bookshops or through Kindle Unlimited, and in all 4 cases, I think they're really great, fun, easy breezy reads. So, well, actually, one of them is not a fun, easy breezy read, but I think it's great. So I've got 4 categories for you here today, and we're going to talk about classic sci-fi, modern sci-fi, and more urban, kind of more realistic is the wrong term, but like near future sort of sci-fi. And then we're going to go into a self-published sci-fi novel. So let's start with the classic sci-fi. And this classic sci-fi, so in my fantasy starter pack, I did not recommend Lord of the Rings because I don't think that it's great for me personally. However, the Lord of the Rings of science fiction is Dune by Frank Herbert. And I do recommend Dune as your classic sci-fi book. So Dune is a longer book. It is has a fantastic world building. It is the story as I expect everyone and their mother knows because of the recent movies. Stars Paul Atreides, a lord from a lord's son from a kind of stormy, watery planet who is sent to a desert planet when his father is kind of baited into taking it over by the emperor, and then that family is then betrayed. So really, really interesting story. I think that the films have adapted the story incredibly well. And if you know the story from the film, I do still think there's more to gain from the books. There is a little bit extra and more going on there. But overall, I think that the book is just really, really fantastic. It's very foundational for science fiction. So if you have seen, things like Star Wars and then other series like Red Rising and Sun Eater that are massive and very popular science fiction series, those take a lot from Dune. Having read Dune was the one thing that made me feel comfortable in writing this list, because while I'm not a massive sci-fi reader, I do feel like I have read the number 1 classic sci-fi book, and I was like, okay, if I can recommend this from personal experience, I feel like I could do this list. What's the modern sci-fi that I have picked? So I have picked a book which I'm actually going to say don't read this book. Listen to it. I picked Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Project Hail Mary is the story of Ryland Grace. He is a physics teacher and scientist who wakes up on a spaceship. And he's been kept in a medical coma, and he's not entirely sure what's going on. And through the book, we learn why Grace is there. We learn what his mission in space is. We learn what happened to his crewmates. We learn why he was in a coma. And around a third of the way in, there's a big, cool reveal, which I'm not going to spoil. But that particular plot element is the reason that I personally think that this is a much, much better audiobook experience. So this one's on Audible, obviously, as basically all audiobooks are. I would highly, highly recommend get yourself an Audible trial if you've never read on there before, or just, get a month's of Audible, get a copy of Project Hail Mary, because it is a genuinely really fun, really fascinating, but also very emotional read. And I highly enjoyed listening to it when I listened to the book a couple of years ago. And I've basically been recommending it to anyone and everyone I know who is into audiobooks. It is a more grounded sci-fi in that it is kind of Ryland Grace is from an Earth which is not too far in the future from our own, but it is set in like deep space. So but it's more close to modern day technology, if that makes sense. Speaking of modern day technology, let's go straight into my third recommendation, which is for a more modern science fiction story. So while Project Hail Mary is very modern, I wanted to pick something that was almost like urban fantasy. So this sci-fi story takes place on Earth. It is with a kind of almost believable, achievable science. And this book is called Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This book is such a phenomenal, fast-paced sci-fi thriller. Essentially, the main character, whose name is Jason, is happily married to the woman of his dreams. They've got a teenage son, and he is a teacher. But it turns out that in another universe, he ditched his perfect wife for his career. And in that universe, he created a machine that allowed him to travel the multiverse. And this other version of himself has come to Jason's world and kidnapped him and taken over his life. And now he's dropped Jason off kind of in the multiverse, and it's up to Jason to find his way back home, essentially. The story's really, really interesting. It was a real page turner. I think I read that. I think you could honestly, if you're a fast reader, you could read this in a day. This is a starter pack video though, so you might not be that experienced, or you may just be that you're not experienced with sci-fi. But if you're a fast reader, you could read this whole book in a day. I had such a good time reading it, and would highly recommend it. It's a really great thriller. You'll be on the edge of your seat. There's twists and turns that I absolutely could not and did not predict. And a really great character at the heart of it that I genuinely felt for. So definitely one that I would massively recommend. I've just noticed that it looks like I've dribbled down myself. I promise you, that was the cat. He's a real dribbler, and he's very annoying about it. And he was sat on my lap when I was filming the previous video. I imagine he was dribbling the whole time. Finally, let's come to my final category, which is self-published fantasy. Fantasy? Sci-fi. So, for self-published fantasy, I have to admit, I didn't have many options, because I've only read a few self-published sci-fi books. However, one self-published sci-fi series has massively taken over my sci-fi life, and that is the Hybrid Helix by JCM Byrne, of which the first book, which is the one I'm recommending to you, is Wistful Ascending. So Wistful Ascending stars a Canadian from Earth called Rohan, who lives in deep space on a space station called Wistful, and the reason he lives out there is because he isn't fully human. He's half human and half alien, and his alien half gives him the ability to have like great power. So he can fly, he can tow spaceships, he can go super fast. He's incredibly, incredibly powerful. Think of him like Superman level power, and he lives on this giant space station where millions of people make their homes. So for that, think something like Deep Space Nine or Babylon 5, like a whole city in space, almost a country in space. And he works for them, not on security as you might imagine, but he's actually the tow chief. So as the tow chief, his job is basically to fly out into space, because he can fly, and to use his superhuman strength to tow ships into dock. And the reason he tows the ships into dock instead of them using their engines is because if they, for example, are using their engines and they make a mistake or slip or something like that, the ship could just barrel straight through the space station, and that's bad. No one wants that. Millions of people would die. So The station has him as tow chief, and that's kind of his job. And this book, Wistful Ascending, is a really, really fascinating kind of look into like his daily life. So you get a lot of Rohan's daily life. You meet his friends, you meet the woman that he's interested in, and pursuing a relationship with eventually. And you also get to see a bit of his job as the tow chief, but there's also this kind of foreshadowing of big issues on the rise. There is a Imperial battle cruiser nearby. There's lots going on that's, I think, really, really interesting. So there's lots going on that's really, really interesting. I love the characters in this book. If you like shows like, as I've mentioned, Deep Space Nine, Babylon 5, but also if you really like the Amazon animated show Invincible or the comic book that it's based on, this is one that I would highly recommend for you. So we've got superhero, sci-fi, space opera, and all those things go together like peanut butter and jelly, or peanut butter and jam, or whatever you want to call it. Absolutely huge recommendation for this one. It's a lovely, easy breezy book to read through. It's also on Kindle Unlimited, so you can read it completely for free if you've got a free trial there, and Amazon seems to be weirdly giving out trials for Kindle Unlimited constantly. But if not, then you can just sign up for a month and read this, and actually all 4 sequels to this book. So there's 3 sequels in the same series, and then there is Partial Function, which is like a sidequel to book 3. Really, really interesting. I am sure you'll love this series, especially if you like any of the influences or similar media properties that I've mentioned. So I know that my sci-fi knowledge is not as in-depth. For example, I haven't read stuff like The Expanse or the Culture series or any of Adrian Tchaikovsky's sci-fi stuff. However, of the books that I have read, these are the 4 sci-fi books that I think are really good for beginners to get into the genre. And that's honestly because I used those 4 books to get into the genre myself. There's other series that I could have recommended here, things like Red Rising or Sun Eater. But I think that both Red Rising and Sun Eater have kind of weaker opening books. Red Rising in particular, there's a lot of content warnings that I would want to give there. And honestly, I don't think that that's... you want to go into your first experience of the genre with content warnings. So I think that these 4 books are a really fantastic window into the genre. And also Project Hail Mary and Dark Matter are completely standalone. Dune can be read as a standalone. And while Wistful Ascending is the start of a series, again, I think you could really read and enjoy this one standalone, because I actually read the first book in September and I didn't read the second book until January. So definitely one that I would really recommend for everybody. All of these books. If you have any books that you think that I should have swapped out, if there are anything that you think I've missed or anything you think I'm just plain wrong about, please let me know down in the comments down below. Although, be nice. I'm still getting more embedded in the sci-fi world from a mostly fantasy background. And please do also like this video if you liked it. And please do subscribe to the channel for more science fiction content. I'll be posting a science fiction book review next week. It will be a reading vlog as well. So I hope that you enjoy those. And for anything else, please come back to the channel and I'll speak to you